Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you guys like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So it seems as if the momentum has officially shifted. And we've been talking about this for a while. Kamala Harris replaces Joe Biden. She gets glowing wall-to-wall media coverage while she hides and only does these, rallies on teleprompter, you name it. She's getting all this positive press and it's not sustainable. She hits a wall. The DNC, that was her peak. It's all downhill from here. You had the interview last week, you have the debate next week, and you have this week in the middle that we're in right now. And what you see is Donald Trump's betting odds are increasing. He's at 53% in Polymarket. Kamala Harris is at 46%. And he's leading in Nevada in the betting odds. He's leading in Pennsylvania in the betting odds. Wisconsin and Michigan are close. Personally, I think the polls in Wisconsin, as we've always seen, they keep on missing these low propensity Trump voters there, to a lesser extent in Michigan. But Michigan and Wisconsin pollsters routinely underestimate Donald Trump in both of those states. So we need to get the turnout up for sure. But it does seem as if we do, Donald Trump very well could win Michigan, and I think he is favored in the state of Wisconsin as things stand today. But it proves once again, it's all a facade, and the American people are taking note, and the internal polls that we saw for the Harris campaign, or that have at least been discussed by a lot of people, including many people who don't like Trump and many people who want Harris to win. A lot of Democrats are saying the internals don't paint the same exact picture as the national polling. And people could say, well, maybe they're saying that to make sure their voters turn out. But their voters are high propensity. They are going to turn out regardless. We know that in these places. And you have Harris going to New Hampshire. It doesn't seem like a campaign that's serious or built to win. They're funneling money to down ballot races, despite the fact that Democrats are already well-funded down ballot, especially enough to win. They're doing very well in the polls that we see nationally. But again, I do anticipate that there could be some down ballot surprises because it is a presidential year, as there were in 2020 across the board. But you check and see what Democrats are focusing on right now. Oh, it's Russia. It's Russia again. It was Russia in 2016, 2020. They censored stories because out of fear, it's Russian push disinformation, that later turned out to be 100% true. And to anyone who actually was able to pay attention in 2020, it was 100% true. And when you look at what they're trying to do, they're trying to say, Russia's trying to manipulate the election. It's 2016 all over again. Apparently, the allegation is that this network, which is loosely affiliated with the Russian government, RT, they've been around for a while. We've basically banned them since 2020. They are allegedly funding some other network that most people probably have never heard of. They probably don't even have enough viewers to even change the election outcome, one could say, in terms of the people that are actually viewing the network. They're trying to say, it's Russia. It's not Russia. It's you. It's always been you in terms of these Democrats, these people. Hillary Clinton lost because of Russia. We hear about Trump or Republicans. They say that they're sore losers. How many years did this Russian investigation go on, draining millions upon millions of dollars of taxpayer funding because they couldn't admit defeat? They couldn't admit that Donald Trump rode down the escalator, just stuck it to the establishment, went out there and beat them. They couldn't do it. And in 2020, that was not an election you could say was run the same way it was run in 2016, of all these law changes, a lot of stuff going on. And there's probably a little bit more of a legitimacy in terms of the questioning that many people on the right had engaged in and still do engage in. But, you look at Russia, that's always the excuse. If Donald Trump wins, you think the Democrats are going to easily give up power? The answer is probably not. We've been down this road before. The pendulum always does swing back in the other direction in that regard. Of course, they're not going to easily take it. We know that. especially now because, oh, Harris is surging in the polls. Let's put all of these polls in the aggregate that are from liberal pollsters that nobody's ever heard of, but polls that are from like right-leaning firms that were accurate in 2016 and 2020. No, we're going to say that those polls are illegitimate. Some of these aggregates do that type of stuff, and they give a lot of weight to these polls that admit they're push polls, but they do it anyways. They put them in there anyways. The poll should be invalid, should be thrown out of the aggregate if you have a serious aggregate that's going to analyze things properly. But you look at this Russia stuff, how many times have we gone over Russia? What has it really amounted to? Yeah, nothing. They found in 2016 that there were some poorly placed Facebook ads that were basically just sowing division on both sides, but nobody really has ever heard of these pages that were apparently being funded or controlled or ran by Russia. They're not really all that effective. And why is Russia trying to manipulate opinion in the election in favor of Donald Trump? Donald Trump actually was the toughest president on Russia in history. And under Joe Biden, you look what Putin has done. Under Obama, you look what Putin did. Donald Trump, just because he has this philosophy of, we'll be nice to our adversaries and we'll try to get along and have a good relationship, they say that that's a problem. But this just weak leadership and allowing Russia to see what goes on in Afghanistan, and then they decide to, okay, now we're going to go in to Ukraine, which is something Putin always wanted to do. Yeah, he did it. He got away with it. That's why Putin endorsed Biden in the Tucker interview. Now, is he going to endorse Harris? I mean, technically by proxy, it seems like he probably would rather have a weak leader in charge of America if he's trying to, go out there and take over more land in Eastern Europe and things like that. And we know it. We absolutely do know it. This is just ridiculous. This is already planning. Oh, we probably may end up losing, so we have to have the insurance policy again, except it doesn't land this time. It doesn't always land, the second time, and it usually doesn't actually. When you try to do stuff like this, we've seen the movie play out. Nobody at this day and age is saying, oh, Trump won because of Russia, because we have reports that were done by the DOJ, which was not exactly all that friendly with Donald Trump. And they concluded after 2 years that there was nothing. It was just all bogus. And we know it. And we know it's bogus. And the American people know that it's bogus. We see what's going on all around us. You see this right here. Donald Trump, he's raising a lot of money, $130 million in August. He has $300 million on hand to spend down the stretch. That's $150 million per month in the next 2 months. Donald Trump's campaign, it's not going to be strapped for cash. This isn't going to be 2016 or 2020. It's a well-oiled machine. And who knows, could he even get a sentencing bump if he gets like a deferred jail sentence? It's possible. And that's one of the reasons why people are expecting that he might just, get a fine, or he might get like probation or something, because all of this lawfare has only served to benefit Donald Trump. And, they've indicted him 4 times. They said he was done, convicted him. Technically, they say convicted felon. They stopped using it because it wasn't effective, because of the fact that they know very well that it's all bogus. And the most, I guess you would say, serious case that they had, which was a weak case, Trump already won the case. It was dropped, and it was selective prosecution if you look at what Biden did there too. But you look at this. Oh, Democrats, they finally got another Republican endorsement. John McCain's youngest son says, oh, it's horrible that Donald Trump used Arlington Cemetery as a political backdrop. He's changing his voter registration to Democrat. Here's the problem. He never said anything when his own dad did it. Trump wasn't filming a political ad at Arlington Cemetery, but John McCain, he filmed a political ad at Arlington Cemetery. You see that there. And speaking of family members and opposite politics, you see this here. Tim Walz's family, extended family in Nebraska, all in for Donald Trump. Tim Walz's brother, all in for Donald Trump. And I think Vance really should bring them as guests if the VP debate has an audience, which I don't think that it does, given the fact that I don't think the presidential debates have a live audience. But if it does, he probably should bring them. Why not? You see that type of thing happening in politics quite a bit. But also, it just goes to show that these Democrats, the same people, they made a big deal at the Kennedy family not endorsing RFK Jr. But the difference is nobody expected the Kennedy family to go out there and endorse a third-party candidate just because he's related to them, because the Kennedy family at large are establishment Democrats, and RFK Jr. was like the exception that proved the rule. In terms of something like this, it just goes to show that Tim Walz, I'm like the guy that's a token white guy, the white working class minstrel show, but then you look at his actual family, they're not even standing with him. You want to talk about weird? I think that's something that's kind of weird. If you're not likable enough to the point where you can't even get your own family on board, what does that say about you, and what does that say about Kamala Harris? Nothing good. And nothing good does seem to be the polling situation for Kamala Harris recently. If you look at the national polling, Kamala Harris is up by 1.9% in the RCP average. That's not good enough, because if that's the end result, and polls have underestimated Trump twice, if they do it again, Donald Trump is probably going to go out there and he's probably going to end up winning the election. It's how these things work. In terms of the national popular vote, Harris needs to win it by over 3 to be comfortable about the Electoral College going in her favor. And as of right now, you see polls like Quinnipiac that are really liberal biased. They're showing her up 1. I mean, you have some of these other polls from like ABC News. Ipsos is a horrible methodology. And you have 2 Harris plus 4s from Ipsos in here already. And you've got some old polls from back during the peak of the honeymoon. And what are they showing? Harris plus 3, Harris plus 4. But in terms of the recent polls we've seen post the DNC, only counting one of the Ipsos polls, you have probably around Harris plus 1, Harris plus 1.5. That's not good enough. And if you look at the battleground states, they're neck and neck post-DNC. This is typically when Democrats peak in polling, usually late August. Some of it does carry over into early September. But you look at Arizona. Trump's up in Arizona by 1. Harris is barely up in Georgia, Nevada. She's up by 1 in Michigan. Pennsylvania's tied in Wisconsin. She's up by 1.4. And overall, part of that is because the polls that are in these aggregates, like if you look at the state of Michigan, for example, you have the polls out of Bloomberg, Morning Compost, that's Harris plus 3, that's in the aggregate, but you don't have in the two-way candidate race, the recent poll that came out yesterday, because you have 3 polls, the 3 most recent polls that we see, from polls that are in-state or are very accurate at the presidential level in-state. You have Trafalgar, that's a tie. You have Epic, MRA, that is from, I believe, the Detroit Free Press. Trump is up by 1. And also the Detroit News has Trump up by 1. Those last 2 pollsters, they accurately gauged the midterm result in Michigan. I believe that the Detroit Free Press had Whitmer by 11. And then the Detroit News had Whitmer by 9. She won by around 10. So the fact that Trump is leading in both of those very high-quality state polls kind of shows me that Michigan, it's up for grabs. Even if Harris wins it by 1, that still likely means Trump is winning Wisconsin and probably Pennsylvania. You look at the polls in Pennsylvania, the only poll she's leading in is the Morning Compost poll, which is all over the place, does not have the best methodology or track record. And Morning Compost in 2022 had Democrats winning the House popular vote by 5 points. They were off by 8 in a year where a lot of polls were off in the opposite direction. So when you look at that, it's just no, this is not a pollster that I put a lot of weight in. It's going to be interesting to see how the polls drop in the coming weeks and months. But the fact that a lot of these swing states are tied, maybe you could say, oh, well, it's anybody's game. I believe it's anybody's game, but just based on how Donald Trump typically does down the stretch and how Republicans do down the stretch, it seems as if Donald Trump has a lot of room to grow. And it's true, there's not a lot of undecideds, and we know that, but it just does come down to turnout. But it's not like Harris is running away with the election, because I don't even believe that she's the favorite. When you look at the betting markets are not telling you everything, but she peaked with her momentum, and betting markets do show, momentum shifts. If they show anything, they're not always right, but they do usually show momentum. And right now the momentum is not with Harris. People are not rushing to put their money on Kamala Harris. They are rushing to put their money on Donald Trump. And that's good news for Donald Trump overall when you see these things shake out. But you've seen just very few polls at the state level anyways. You see CNN drops a polling dump here, and it's kind of ridiculous. For some reason, there's no head-to-head in Michigan or Wisconsin or Georgia. They only put the multi-candidate races in there, partially because of Kennedy is polled there, but they didn't poll the third parties in the other states. It's kind of weird. But what you do have is the fact that Kennedy's not getting 4% in Michigan. There's no way. Those are undecideds parking their vote. Pennsylvania is not voting to the right of Michigan by 5 points. And the state of Wisconsin is not going to be voting to the left of Arizona by 11 points when the states voted pretty much identical in the 2020 election, and Wisconsin's trending right, Arizona's trending left. So CNN comes out with their polls. They're usually all over the place, as CNN typically is when it comes down to polling, but also it's like the Pennsylvania Senate race is tied. That's the only poll that shows a tied race in both the Senate race and the presidential race, or in terms of the margins are the same for both of them. I mean, that's good news for Dave McCormick, don't get me wrong. If he's really running in line with Trump in the state, he has a shot, which I didn't think he would at the beginning of the year. But in terms of the CNN polls, I'm not exactly willing to sit here and put a ridiculous amount of stock into all of them, not just because I disagree with the results. I don't think Trump's up by 5 in Arizona, if you want me to be completely honest. And I think a tie in Pennsylvania, as things stand today, is pretty much about right. We had Trump up by 1. But, a lot of these pollsters that drop like these big dumps, they're all over the place. Morning Compost, CNN, I mean, even Emerson to an extent. And it kind of shows what we see here. But either way, close race between Trump and Harris, but a lot going good for Trump. He has all the momentum. His odds are surging, and that's phenomenal news for him. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle, out.